The Commune Committee did not want to calculate this way. It was cheating. But those people were higher up. What could we do? I have this problem. I get emotional very easily. I wondered why the higher the official, the more he dared to lie, to deceive the party and the people. Jiang Hongbin, the financial secretary, was horrified when he heard such an enormous figure. He said, "Are you letting people eat? This is sheer absurdity."
Party officials ignored the protests and continued to submit the inflated figures. The state took the grain accordingly. It was sent to feed the cities, repay Soviet debts, or left to rot in warehouses. Peasants across China were beginning to starve.
Anhui was one of the 4 provinces worst hit. All my mother could do was gather weeds with my aunt. There wasn't enough grain, so we ate weeds.
By the summer of 1959, the leaders knew the Great Leap Forward was going badly wrong.
Mao decided to go back to Shaoshan, his hometown, to have a look. He wanted to find out the truth. He wanted people to speak freely. I think that when he was in Shaoshan, he found that there really were problems in the Great Leap Forward.
After his trip, Mao decided to moderate production targets. In July 1959, the party met at the mountain resort of Lushan to set new, realistic goals. Minister of Defense Peng Dehuai, the hero of the Korean War, was one of Mao's oldest revolutionary comrades.
For my generation of officials, Peng Dehuai was a very down-to-earth peasant and an excellent combat general. He hated fraud and hypocrisy. He said what was on his mind. Back in the early days, if he needed to talk to Mao and saw that Mao was still in bed, he would go and pull off his quilt, saying, "Get up, let's talk." He said, but now it's very difficult to have that kind of relationship. He is the chairman. It's so hard to see him, let alone discuss things with him.
Peng wrote to Mao describing what he saw as the problems of the Great Leap Forward. What Peng intended as loyal criticism, Mao saw as political treachery.
When Mao Zedong started the meeting, he said he had not slept all night. He couldn't sleep, even after he took his sleeping pills. He just got up and called this meeting. He was very serious. You could see that at times he was very angry. He said, "It's all right for you to oppose me. When I have no alternative, I'll just take the Liberation Army, go up to the mountains, and carry out guerrilla warfare." Finally, the resolution was that Peng Dehuai was against the Communist Party. When Mao left the room, I was following him. Peng was in front of us. Mao called him. "Marshal Peng, if there are any questions, we can talk." Peng swung his arm and said, "What's there to talk about? There's nothing more to say."
Zhou Enlai and Liu Shaoqi agreed with Peng, but even they did not dare speak out.
Nobody had the courage to oppose Mao Zedong. He was considered absolutely correct. He stood high and looked far. People thought they were not up to Mao's level. Even if someone wanted to make a comment, he would not dare say anything or reveal his own feelings.
As a result, production goals were not cut. Officials continued to demand more grain than the peasants could give. The Great Leap Forward continued through 1960. Millions of peasants were starving.
Old peasants said in a fury, "No, grain comes from the blood and sweat of peasants. It doesn't grow on the backs of intellectuals. Who do they think they're fooling?" In wartime, we protected them and saved their lives. Now we provide them with food and clothing. They have full stomachs, and still they come to cheat us. Don't they have a conscience?
My aunt's family was a typical big family in the countryside, with several generations living together. There were 36 people altogether. During the 3 years of famine, one died after another. Eventually, only 3 people were left alive. At first, when someone died, they would take the body and bury it. Later, they didn't have the strength to take the bodies out. They could only look at them. They watched the bodies being eaten by rats and their eyeballs dug out. People didn't even have the strength to chase the rats away.
The famine was very severe and widespread, but newspapers did not report it at all. People only knew that their local area was suffering. To keep the news from spreading, peasants were not allowed to leave their areas, even to beg.
At first, peasants ate everything they had at home. Then they ate Genyan earth. It's a kind of white clay. There's a legend in the village, passed down from generation to generation. It says that this clay was provided by old Mother Genyan, who sympathized with the poor people. People would eat it during the famine because it was very fine. But still, it was hard to swallow. At first, the peasants could swallow a little. But after 4 or 5 days, it destroyed their intestines, and they died. After eating all the grass roots and tree bark, they ate the earth.
The famine lasted 3 years. An estimated 30 million people died. Mao's revolution, fought to give the Chinese people a better life, had helped create the largest famine in history. In 1961, Peng Dehuai, a lone voice, wrote, "Grain scattered across the ground. Potato leaves withered. Strong young people have gone to make steel. Only children and old women reap the crops. How will they eat next year? Please, think of the people."